Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining me today. I want to start by saying that the conversation we're about to have is a deeply personal and emotional one. It's a story about a parent's love, a mother's intuition, and the staggering weight of a public life colliding with a private, heartbreaking reality. We've followed their journey for years. We've celebrated their milestones, we've admired their resilience, and in many ways, we've felt like we were a part of their extended family. Elizabeth Johnston, of Seven Little Johnstons fame, has always been an open book with her fans. Alongside her husband Trent, she's raised a beautiful, vibrant family, navigating the unique challenges and triumphs that come with their lives in the spotlight. But recently, something shifted. Followers of the family began to notice a change. The usual flood of cheerful updates and family photos seemed different. There was a palpable anxiety in Elizabeth's posts, a shadow in her eyes that the high-definition glow of the screen couldn't hide. The comments sections filled with concern. Is everything okay with the baby? Elizabeth, you seem so worried. Sending love and prayers. For weeks, it was a quiet, simmering concern. And then, the video came. The one that stopped us all in our tracks. It wasn't a polished, produced piece of reality television. It was raw. It was real. It was a mother sitting alone, her voice trembling, finally ready to tell the truth about her baby's health. And in doing so, she broke down in a devastating confession that laid bare the immense struggle she and her family have been facing behind closed doors. Today, we're going to talk about that confession. We're going to walk through what Elizabeth shared, piece by heartbreaking piece, not to sensationalize her pain, but to understand it. To honor her courage in speaking out, and to talk about the broader issues her story brings to light, the immense pressure on mothers, the unique challenges of parenting a child with special needs, and the brutal, often lonely, journey of confronting a reality that is so different from the one you dreamed of. So, let's begin. Elizabeth started that video looking directly into the camera. She looked tired. Not the "I had a sleepless night" tired that every new parent knows, but a deep, soul-level exhaustion. She began by thanking everyone for their love and support, her voice already thick with emotion. She said she'd been reading the comments, the messages, and she knew she couldn't stay silent any longer. She said, and I'm paraphrasing here, "You've shared our joys, and it's only fair that I share our struggles. Because maybe by sharing this, another mother out there who feels as lost and as scared as I do will feel a little less alone." And with that, she took a deep, shaky breath and began to reveal the truth. The baby, their beautiful, cherished child, had been diagnosed with a rare and complex genetic disorder. This wasn't a simple diagnosis that came after one doctor's visit. This was the culmination of months of worry, of endless appointments with specialists, of blood draws that made her baby scream, of genetic tests that took weeks to return results, each day of waiting feeling like a year. She described the feeling of sitting in sterile white examination rooms, holding her baby, listening to doctors use words she couldn't pronounce, talking about prognosis and treatment plans and potential outcomes. She said it felt like she was underwater, the doctors' voices muffled and distant, while her entire world had shrunk to the tiny, fragile life in her arms. The specific disorder she named is one that, frankly, most of us have never heard of. It affects multiple systems in the body. It can impact muscle tone, it can cause developmental delays, it can involve heart complications, and it requires a level of medical management that is, to put it mildly, overwhelming. She listed the team of doctors now involved in their lives: a pediatric cardiologist, a neurologist, a gastroenterologist, a physical therapist, an occupational therapist. The list went on. This isn't just a baby who needs a little extra care. This is a child whose life will be a marathon of medical interventions. But here's the thing. The diagnosis, as earth-shattering as it was, wasn't the core of her devastating confession. The diagnosis was the what. The confession was about the how. How it was affecting her. How it was breaking her. And that's where the video transcended from a medical update into a profound and heartbreaking human document. She began to talk about the guilt. The "what did I do wrong?" guilt that claws at the heart of every parent facing a child's illness. Did she miss something during her pregnancy? Was it something she ate? A medication she took? A stress she couldn't avoid? She recounted lying awake at night, her mind racing, replaying every single moment of those 9 months, searching for a clue, for a mistake, for a reason. She confessed that, despite doctors assuring her it was a random genetic mutation, nothing anyone could have caused or prevented, she still couldn't silence that voice in her head. That voice that whispered, "This is your fault." And then she spoke about the grief. This is a concept that many people don't associate with a child who is still very much alive and loved. But Elizabeth gave voice to a grief that is so real, so visceral for parents in her situation. She called it the grief for the life that might have been. She confessed that she had to mourn the future she had imagined for her child. The first steps, the first words, the first day of school, the soccer games, the prom, the college graduation, all those milestones that every parent dreams of, suddenly thrown into question. Would her child walk? Would they talk? What would their quality of life be? She wasn't saying she loved her baby any less. In fact, she made it painfully clear that her love was a ferocious, all-consuming force. But she was honest enough to admit that alongside that immense love, there was also a deep, profound sadness for the loss of a typical life. She cried as she described packing away the tiny shoes they'd been so excited to buy, realizing that her baby might not wear them for a very long time, if ever. She talked about seeing other babies the same age on social media, reaching their developmental milestones, and feeling a pang of something she was ashamed to feel, envy, mixed with a crushing sense of failure. She said, "You tell yourself not to compare, but it's impossible. Your heart breaks a little every time." This is the unvarnished truth that so many parents are afraid to speak aloud. They fear being judged as ungrateful or as not loving their child enough. But Elizabeth's courage was in naming that feeling, in dragging it out into the light. She was giving permission to thousands of other parents to feel that complex, messy, and entirely human mix of emotions. And then came the part of the confession that truly shattered me. She started talking about the physical and mental toll. The constant care. She described the feeding tubes, the medications that had to be administered on a strict, round-the-clock schedule, the therapy exercises that felt like they were torturing her own child, the constant monitoring of breathing and heart rate. She hasn't had a full night's sleep since the baby was born. She's always on high alert, her body humming with a constant, low-grade anxiety. She described the feeling of being on duty 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, with no breaks, no respite. She looked into the camera, her face streaked with tears, and said the words that so many mothers think but are terrified to say, "I am not okay. I am drowning. Some days, I don't know how I'm going to get through the next hour, let alone the next day." She confessed to moments of sheer panic, where she's had to lock herself in the bathroom, turn on the faucet to muffle the sound, and just sob, her body shaking uncontrollably. She talked about the isolation. The friends who slowly drifted away because they didn't know what to say or how to help. The invitations that stopped coming. The feeling of being trapped in her own home, a prisoner to her child's medical needs. And perhaps the most devastating admission of all, she confessed that there are moments, in the dead of night, when she questions her own strength. She wonders if she is strong enough for this. She wonders if she has what it takes. She said, "I look at my baby, and I love them more than life itself, but I am so tired. And I am so scared." To hear a woman like Elizabeth Johnston, whom the public perceives as a pillar of strength, admit to feeling so broken, it was a powerful reminder of the chasm that often exists between public perception and private reality. We see the curated social media posts, the smiling family photos, and we make assumptions. We think they have it all figured out. We forget that behind the screen, they are human beings dealing with the same overwhelming fears and uncertainties as anyone else. Her confession wasn't a cry for pity. She made that very clear. It was a cry for understanding. It was a plea for the world to see the truth behind the highlight reel. It was an act of radical vulnerability, an attempt to shatter the illusion of perfect parenting and replace it with a more honest, more compassionate narrative. Now, in the wake of this raw and emotional disclosure, the question on everyone's mind is, what happens now? Where does the Johnston family go from here? And what can we, as an audience, as a community, learn from their experience? First and foremost, it's crucial to talk about the support system. Elizabeth did speak about her husband, Trent. She acknowledged his strength, but she also hinted at the strain this has placed on their relationship. The constant stress, the financial burden of medical bills, the emotional fatigue, it all takes a toll. They have to find moments to connect as a couple, not just as caregivers. They have to remember the love that built their family in the midst of managing the crisis that is threatening to consume it. And then there are the other children. Elizabeth and Trent are parents to a whole family. This diagnosis doesn't just affect the baby, it affects every single member of the household. Siblings can feel neglected, confused, or scared. Their needs don't disappear. In fact, they may intensify as they struggle to process this new family dynamic. Elizabeth mentioned the challenge of trying to be present for her other kids while her mind and body are constantly pulled toward the needs of her medically fragile infant. It's an impossible balancing act, and the guilt of feeling like you're failing your other children is yet another heavy layer on an already crushing burden. So, let's expand this conversation. Elizabeth Johnston's story, while unique in its specifics, is a window into a much larger experience. She is one of millions of parents around the world who are caring for children with special needs, chronic illnesses, and complex medical conditions. And many of them are suffering in silence, weighed down by the same feelings of guilt, grief, and isolation that Elizabeth so bravely described. What do these parents need? They need more than just thoughts and prayers. They need tangible, practical support. They need people to show up. Not with a vague, let me know if you need anything, but with specific offers. I'm coming over on Tuesday to mow your lawn. I've made you a lasagna, it's in your freezer. I'm taking your other kids to the park for 3 hours this afternoon to give you a break. This removes the mental burden from the parents, who are already overwhelmed with decision-making, to have to assign tasks. They need financial support. The cost of caring for a child with special needs is astronomical. Copays for specialist visits, expensive medications, adaptive equipment, therapy not covered by insurance. It adds up to tens, even hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. Fundraisers and community support can be a literal lifeline. They need emotional support from people who truly understand. This is where support groups, both online and in person, are invaluable. Connecting with other parents who are on a similar journey can reduce that profound sense of isolation. They can share tips, vent their frustrations, and celebrate small victories with people who truly get it. And perhaps most importantly, they need us to change the way we talk about parenting and disability. We need to move away from narratives of inspiration porn, where parents of children with disabilities are portrayed as saints or superheroes. This is a damaging trope because it sets an impossible standard. Elizabeth wasn't asking to be seen as a hero. She was asking to be seen as a human being, a tired, scared, loving, and struggling human being. We need to create a culture where it is okay for a parent to say, I love my child, and this is really, really hard, without being judged. We need to validate the complexity of their emotions. The love and the grief can, and do, coexist. One does not cancel out the other. Elizabeth's breakdown on camera was not a sign of weakness. It was the opposite. It was the moment the dam broke, releasing months of pent-up fear, stress, and sorrow. And in that release, there is a possibility for healing. There is a possibility for a new kind of strength to emerge, a strength born not from pretending to have it all together, but from the raw, honest acknowledgement of one's own fragility. As the video drew to a close, Elizabeth wiped her tears, took another deep breath, and looked back into the camera. She said that speaking her truth, as painful as it was, felt like a weight had been lifted. She said that her love for her baby was her anchor, the one constant in the storm. She vowed to fight for her child, to be their advocate, to learn everything she could about this disorder, and to find joy in the small moments, a quiet cuddle, a fleeting smile, the feeling of her baby's hand grasping her finger. She ended with a message to other parents watching. "You are not alone," she said. "Your feelings are valid. The guilt, the fear, the grief, it's all part of this. Don't let anyone tell you that you have to be strong all the time. It's okay to fall apart. It's okay to not be okay. Just please, don't suffer in silence. Reach out. Talk to someone. Let people in. We were never meant to carry these burdens alone. We were never meant to carry these burdens alone." Let that sit with you for a moment. Elizabeth Johnston's devastating confession was many things. It was a portrait of a mother's love. It was a map of a broken heart. It was a cry in the dark. But above all, it was an invitation. An invitation for empathy. An invitation for community. An invitation for us all to be a little more real, a little more vulnerable, and a little more supportive of the people around us who might be fighting battles we know nothing about. Her story doesn't have a neat and tidy ending because her journey is just beginning. There will be good days and there will be bad days. There will be moments of breathtaking joy and moments of soul-crushing despair. But she is no longer hiding. She has brought her truth into the light, and in doing so, she has lit a path for others. So, what can we do? We can listen. We can learn. We can offer a helping hand without being asked. We can check our judgments at the door. We can donate to organizations that support families of children with rare diseases. We can be the village that these parents so desperately need. Elizabeth Johnston revealed the truth about her baby's health, and in her devastating confession, she gave us a gift, the gift of her honesty. Let's not waste it. Let's use it to become a kinder, more compassionate, and more connected world. Thank you, Elizabeth, for your courage. And thank you all for listening.